All right, so last topic. I've been thinking about this the entire week
Okay.
because we've been talking a lot about the media. Oh, the media's to blame for the bad basketball coverage. But there's two names that have always been discussed as the people to blame for what's going on
The main
with the media
culprit. Yeah.
coverage of the NBA. And I have to ask you this because I was looking at some numbers. Um, Stephen A. and Skip Bayless, when they had First Take, it was so prominent. Everybody, it was the number one. Yeah, it was the number one talk show, and it still is the number one talk show to this day. Any talk show you can name of in the morning, they were number one. ESPN2 to ESPN Now. Um, Skip went to Fox Sports One. They were huge with Shannon Sharp. So I bring this up because I'm wondering, did they actually hurt the viewership of the NBA? Because people feel like they did. I was looking at some numbers. I was looking at NBA Finals numbers of the past 15 years, from all the way back to 2011, because that's when Skip Bayless came to prominence. That's when he really became a household name. And I was just looking at the ratings, and when Skip Bayless came to prominence, the ratings were great. All the way to, I would say, 2019. But then after 2019, that's when the ratings really took a nosedive. So I would say at the height of LeBron hate, which was when he went to Miami, in my opinion, the ratings was crazy. Like, they was getting 20 million viewership.
Dang.
They were getting 25. Like, these are like Michael Jordan when he was in his heyday type of numbers. Again, Cleveland versus Golden
Warriors,
State.
yeah.
They was getting like 25 million ratings. Like, let me be accurate. I want to make sure I'm accurate on this. But yeah, 2017, the Warriors won 4-1. Game 5 generated close to 25 million views. 2016 finals, Game 5, 6, 7, 20 million. 20 million. Game 7, 31 million. 2015, Game 5, 20 million. Game 6, 23 million. 2014, it was a little lower. 2014, I guess because it's just the
It's the
Spurs versus
Spurs,
the,
yeah.
Spurs, they kind of boring, but they still generated 15 million views here, 14 views there,
Nowadays
18
we
million
can't even
views.
pull
Can't
seven.
even pull that. 2013, it was 14 million views, 16 million views, 20 million views. Game 7, 26 million views. 2012, 16 million views, 15 million views, 17 million views,
Can
18
you
million views.
correlate those numbers with the day League Pass got implemented? What the year League Pass
I
was
don't know. I don't know
implemented?
when League Pass got
Actually, I'm
implemented,
gonna look it up.
but I do remember League Pass being around like around 2012. So I don't know when League Pass got implemented, but
League Pass was created in 2006.
okay, okay.
I want to see like when the modernized
Like the whole
version.
streaming aspect of
Yeah,
it. But regardless, what I'm getting at is this was
the
around the
app came out in 2022.
okay, okay.
So it was
What I'm getting
yeah.
at is this is around the time like when the ratings were high. This was around the time where like Skip, Stephen A, like they were the biggest. Like they were having the craziest debates. They were making the craziest sort of narratives about LeBron, about certain players and stuff like that. And yet the viewership for the finals was still at an all-time high. So I'm wondering, why did the viewership go down? Like, is it because of Stephen A. and Skip? Because I always hear people say that they're the reasons why NBA coverage, NBA viewership is down. So I'm wondering with you, what do you think it is? Like, why did the viewership go down? Is it because of Stephen A. and Skip? Were they the blueprints of it all? Like, what happened? Why?
I know it's easy to blame the talking heads for this as the sole perpetrator. I'm blaming the NBA itself for the lack of viewership nowadays. I feel like they got too comfortable relying on LeBron James in the Golden State feud in the final series. So once that ended, the viewership tanked. Then the next year they had the bubble, and then they had but then, people wasn't really watching basketball like that during the 2020 season, the bubble and all that stuff. So I kind of give them a pass on that. They tried to make something happen. They at least gave us some good basketball.
They got around in the bubble, the numbers were bad. It was like 7 million, 6 million. Yeah. And then the next year it went up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like it went up a little bit. It went like to 9 to 12. But that's still not relatively similar to what the numbers I told you earlier before the pandemic.
Yeah, it's like the NBA, they implemented the streaming stuff, the league pass blockouts, and then also national media, y'all not safe either. Y'all definitely had a big hand in pretty much dogging the product as well as the players, which would in turn cause people to not really care about basketball until, I guess, the finals. And even still, once you create more fair weather fans, they just be like, oh, who cares? Like, we've all been hearing that the NFL is so much better than the NBA and all this and that. People started believing it, and they started parading that same myth. They're like, yeah, I don't even need to watch the NBA. We got people talking about college basketball better than NBA. That's a lie. They be like, oh, college basketball better than NBA. Like, all these, it's just been trashing the product for nearly half a decade at this point. It's just consistently trashing the product and the players and all these narratives. We got, just trashing all the stars and the greats of the.
But wouldn't you say that would be part
I don't think
Stephen A. and Skip being the reason why that occurred? They're the blueprint of it all. Would you say that's the reason? I have a theory, but I'm just letting you
think they have a lot of sons in as far as the media go, where they just try to replicate that hot take culture or type debate show. But I think we got to blame the networks for promoting that kind of stuff and putting it at the forefront of all the shows instead of that just being a niche type of thing. Like those two dudes, those are the dudes who do that. Everybody else provides actual analysis. They started leaning more towards into the controversy, the clippable moments, and all the crazy hot takes. So I blame ESPN and FS1 more than Skip and Stephen A. himself. I can't that's like saying we gotta blame Young Thug for this current era of rap because rappers now all of a sudden getting less and less. It sounds like they're saying less and less words in their music. Like, no, let's blame the executives that promote and look for these artists and promote them to do that kind of stuff.
No, well said. I was looking at some numbers. So I mentioned how Skip came to prominence around 2011. Well, when I'm looking at the numbers, well, he kind of was like, I wouldn't say he's a household name in 2010, but he was started to get some momentum. And the numbers, like Lakers versus Celtics, Game 7 peaked at like 28 million. Game 6 peaked at 17.9 million, and they had like 16, 18, which is good numbers. But like compare it to when LeBron versus the versus Golden State, or LeBron versus the Spurs first go around, it's a little bit better. But before that, I mean, the numbers were. Well, they were okay. They was like in the 15s, 14s. But, man, during that 2010s era, from 2011 to like 2017-ish, when Skip and Stephen A. was doing their thing, I mean, dog, the numbers
you
was
also
going
gotta
crazy.
Know that is true, but you also gotta that was a superstar packed era from the 2010s. You had KD, Russ, Steph, Braun. People gonna be like, Paul George, James Harden.
Paul George, yeah.
James Harden,
yeah.
D Wade was still playing.
He was still playing a little bit.
You had Anthony Davis, DeMarcus Cousins. You had guys in the East like that were big names but weren't the main guys, like John Walls and all them type of dudes. You had the Raptors, DeMar DeRozan. You had all types of dudes. So I feel like that was Melo. Melo as well. I forget Melo. Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, Lob City and all that. Like it was a lot. It was a lot. Like you could watch nearly most teams and be like, yeah, I recognize a guy from this team that makes me want to watch. So it was a very star-studded era. We will never see no hoops like that again, I don't think.
Kawhi Leonard.
Oh, Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I just think here's my theory. I think you mentioned it, but the oversaturation of debate, television, and I think what happened is because when I was watching, I thought, oh, this is what it is. Like this is what it means to be a part of media. Like it's just debate television. Like okay, like I can do that. That's pretty easy. But when you really get down to it, when you start to go to school and you're studying these things, is way
actual journalism,
more than just this is debate television. That is such a, like you mentioned, a niche thing. Like that's not the norm. Like that was just them. They were doing something innovative that we've never really seen from like talk shows. You see it a lot on radio, but like on talk shows, like national television wise.
Back in the day, they were so focused on keeping relationships with players and executives and all that stuff clean so they could get access to closer to the players. Now the Skip and Stephen A was like, man, forget this. We're gonna say crazy stuff, pull all the numbers, and then the networks just followed suit, and then now we got the coverage we got now.
It's more bluntness than ever before.
Yeah.
It's not. It's more debate.
It's less
bluntness.
filtered.
Yeah, it's not as filtered because back then it was more discussion.
Like you would rarely hear back in the day it'd be like, this dude is just bad. Like Stephen A, when he went on that Kwame Brown rant, was one of the first times you really heard a media dude say this dude is just flat out trash.
Yeah, well, that we remember.
Yeah, that we remember.
That you can like just go back to and reference. Because there's
definitely been like local journalists that maybe write like newspaper or
national television, ESPN. Yeah,
exactly.
That's one of the ones where you just reference back to. But I just think you mentioned the executives and the fact that they looked at what Stephen A and Skip were doing, and these are just two dudes on big networks doing it, and they said, hey, we can just copy that.
They caught lightning in a bottle, then tried to manufacture it. It doesn't work like that.
They tried to mimic it.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem resides at. And that's why I say when people blame them, I can understand why they can blame them. You could say they are the blueprint of what's going on right now, why the ratings are down. But it's such a tricky subject because on the one hand, you pretty much made my point, but on one hand, you could blame them for what's going on with the NBA, the low viewership, the coverage of it all. But on the other hand, you have to look at these executives and the fact that they think it's okay to just have a bunch of baseless, narrative-based, either reporting, not even reporting, just analysis in general, instead of having discussion, real analysis, real breakdown of the game. That just boils down to the executives. So I think at the end, it boils down to the executives. It boils down to the people that are overseeing everything going on right now that are to blame. But none of this happens unless Stephen A and Skip do what they did. But
we also, listen, I know this may be an unpopular take. We gotta blame the viewers too, cause y'all was watching it. We was watching it.
Hey, you know what's
but we
crazy?
we was kids though. We was in high school, middle school, so we ain't really know better. It was
crazy?
Grown adults watching that stuff and taking them type of rhetoric and narratives as bond. And they started parading and repeating the same stuff. We gotta put some responsibility on them.
You know what's crazy though? Like, I ain't gonna lie, there's nothing wrong with hate watching.
I don't think
that's what drives the viewership, and I ain't gonna lie, I was hate watching on a lot of these games, but I was interested in the storyline. It's like WWE, where you have
heels and
heel,
baby faces,
and you look at this team and you look at them like they're the heel, like they're the villain, and you're just watching them to hate on them. And I don't think that there's nothing wrong with that, because you had the bad boy Pistons, you had the Boston Celtics, maybe even the Lakers, depending on your own perspective, but I don't see no problem with that. And what Stephen A and Skip did was, they were out of line on some of the things, calling players out of their names, but they did bring some type of excitement to a game. Like me at the time, I hated on LeBron. I ain't gonna lie, I wanted him to lose. But and a lot of that is because of his fans. Like, I could not stand his fans. So Stephen A and Skip, they gonna bring this sort of thing where they looking at LeBron like, yo, you not clutch, you ain't do this and stuff like that. People comparing you to Michael Jordan. Hey, I was with them. I was with them at that time, and I would watch LeBron. I would watch Cleveland just because I'm be hating on them, and that drive viewership. And another teams, they was actually, although they weren't giving great analysis or breakdown, they was talking about other teams as well. They were talking about other players. I remember they talked about John Wall one time.
Oh, Damian Lillard too.
They talked about Damian Lillard. Like they were talking about
Dame
all
time,
these
Kyrie.
different. They was talking about all these different players because again, the NBA built up these players. They
Yeah.
made them household names. They made it to where people care about them. Where I think it went wrong is they kept talking about the same player over and over and over again, and it got redundant. People got tired of hearing it. So, Kyrie Irving, stuff, when they started talking about stuff off the court, that's when things started to get bad. So, like, they used to be hating, but they'd be hating because they on the court, like what they doing on the court. But when it started getting to the load management stuff, the vaccine stuff, when it started to get to a lot of things that are happening off the court and every single day they're talking about the same player for 30 minutes, just chastising them, condemning them for whatever they did, that's when people felt turned off and they're saying, oh, here's the load management. Oh, these players don't care about this. These players don't care about that. And I believe that hurt the viewership of the product.
Absolutely.
I believe they had a hand in that. Because I remember when it first started, it was the Spurs with Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili. It was on national TV, and it was unheard of. They just said, go home, rest. Fly a plane, and rest. And Stephen A. Skip condemned Greg Popovich and the Spurs for doing it. And then LeBron later on with Cleveland, he sat out a couple of games. He just rest. I think it was called just rest back then.
Yeah.
And Stephen A. Skip highlighted that. And then after that, it just Pandora's box.
It spread league wide.
Everything started to happen where load management happened here, load management happened there, and now all we talk about is load management, guys sitting out, guys not caring, and this narrative started to happen. This ripple effect started to happen, and now we're not even talking about the game. We're just talking about what's off the court. But they were the blueprint. The executives are at fault for this. And I just don't, like, what could the NBA do? What could they have done to elevate the game? Because I feel like the media are the ones that elevate these players, not the game, not the league itself. Like, what could they have done?
They could have done a few things. One with the TV deals and all that stuff. A lot of times you can't even see the up-and-coming players because they're not on national television. And you got to pay for League Pass. And then you pay for League Pass, you won't even be able to watch the local games because of blackouts, because of TV deals. So it's just like the All-Star game products that doesn't help. No one cares about the rising stars no more unless you really watch the league. It's just, man.
Because I'll say this, because do you...
Also, at first, I didn't understand the term ring culture. I was like, the whole point of the playing is to win. But now I'm thinking about, I had to really sit back and think. I'm like, well, they kind of have a point as far as ring culture kind of ruined the sport. Because think about it, back in the 2000s and even before then, you would hear about all of these dudes. Like T-Mac versus Kobe was a real debate. But nowadays, you wouldn't be able to get away with that debate because Kobe has the rings. So no one's going to even entertain the idea that T-Mac as an individual could be close to Kobe as an individual player. But no one cares about that if you try to bring it up because Kobe has the ring. So this is non-discussion. And that really started creeping up when a certain player got close to Michael Jordan in ring count, LeBron James. And honestly, now that you put into that kind of perspective, it's like, okay, that makes sense. Because nowadays, first thing people want to talk about, bring up is rings. You mention a player, even they starting to even go back in time, back in the days before we was even born, for players like, oh, you can't compare, they don't even got no rings. But well, dang. Well, what about the individual skill? Like the player, like, so yeah, I think that also the media's emphasis on this person ain't valid because they haven't won anything definitely shifted the tides of how the game is covered and how the players respond to that type of narrative and stuff.
I was just looking at the 2010s and the fact that the ratings were at an all-time high during 2011 to 2018. And we talk about these players. We talk about the amount of talent during that era. I just think the coverage, the way that we looked at these players was completely different than the way we look at these players now when they're covered. The media covers them. And because of debate, again, now there's more just that style, that first take, undisputed style of television where everything is debate now. We have more player-centric coverage. A lot of players are now in these shows, and they're not doing as much research as a journalist as somebody like that would do. So it looks like they're hating. It looks like they're just going off of when they were in the league, how it's supposed to be. Lou Williams, for example, or a Shaquille O'Neal is a great example. Charles Barkley, those type of people.
Brandon Jennings.
I just think the way the game is covered has completely hurt the viewership of the NBA because people aren't excited to want to watch the game. You have to pitch. It's a pitch. You're pitching people to say, hey, you should watch this game because X, Y, and Z. Even before they click on the game, like, why should I watch this game? And then I'm watching the game. It doesn't matter how bad it is. It's just, here's the reason why you should watch this game. And back in 2011 to 2018, matter of fact, scratch that, 2011 to 2016, before KD went to the Warriors, because after that, that's when the game was screwed because there was no type of competition because everybody knew the Warriors were going to win with KD. But 2011 to 2016, we looked at, all right, each one of these teams with these players, we expect some sort of good basketball to be displayed. We expect some sort of good competition. Trailblazers versus Grizzlies. You had I think they called themselves the Grindhouse or something like that, with Zach Randolph, with Marc Gasol, Grind, whatever, against the Trailblazers with Damian Lillard at one point. It was LaMarcus Aldridge, and then they had C.J. McCollum.
That Dame shot against the Rockets in the playoffs.
Right.
Yeah.
So we knew, okay, these are two really good teams. We should expect really good basketball. They have Damian Lillard. They have Mike Conley and these dudes. They play the game well. Nowadays, it's not covered that well, where people just don't care anymore. A game like the Trailblazers versus the Grizzlies won't have people all that excited because the way the game is covered, we're not highlighting a guy like a Kay Cunningham, those type of players that are either up and coming or are ascending and are just very talented. We don't take the time to do that anymore. And although Stephen A. and Skip were hating a lot and were pushing certain narratives, they were still highlighting these players. They were still highlighting a lot of the talent. They're not doing that anymore. We don't see a whole lot of that. And that's the problem. Instead, when they do talk about a guy like Giannis, who hasn't really been in the limelight lately because his team isn't contending, they'll say, well, his game just is not as flashy in this era because he doesn't shoot a bunch of threes. His game just doesn't translate to this era compared to a Jokic or a Luka or somebody because he doesn't shoot a bunch of threes.
The numbers say otherwise.
So that's where we're at right now, where we're more condemning them on their style of play rather than appreciating them for continuing to play in this era, even though he was drafted in like 2013. It's been over 10 years. So that's where we're at right now, where it's more of a negative. We're condemning these guys instead of appreciating them when we bring up their name. And that's the problem.
It's like these dudes care more about personality than talent. They will cover someone who's not that good over dudes who really are doing it on a court night in and a night out simply because of personality reasons. Like, let me be honest. I'm not a Celtics fan or anything by that. Jason Tatum is one of the best players in the league. And all because if he's a little corny sometimes, people don't like him. Like, what are we talking about? It's not like he's not a bad person. He ain't been in no scandals. He ain't do no he's not a bad teammate. He doesn't say ignorant stuff in the media. He's like, if you made a player on 2K of how an NBA superstar should behave and all that, it would be a Jason Tatum type player. But the league, they just don't care. They only highlight the negative stuff. Oh, he tries to copy the Kobe, the Kevin Garnett. We did it, and what they gonna say now? Like, okay, we understand. Yes, it's kind of corny. Cool. What does that have to do with him scoring, averaging 30 points a night?
I think Twitter is too much of an influence to a lot of these networks.
I agree.
I believe that they rely so heavily on what's going on Twitter, when Twitter only makes up maybe 10% of what's actually going on in the world. So I think if the networks just stop relying so heavily on social media and actually just came up with their own ideas, fresh ideas from other folks in the network, I think it will grow a lot better. I think there will be a lot more media coverage because a lot of their talking points come from social media. So I think social media has played a large part of why we're in this predicament, because we mentioned last week about the trolls, the Twitter trolls. To conclude this conversation, I do think Stephen A, Skip, they put out the blueprint, but they're not the main culprits. They put out the blueprint, but they're not the number one reason why it is why it is. It's the executives, because they thought, hey, these two dudes, what they were doing, a niche thing, something that was unprecedented, now we can copycat it and make money off of it. And that's just the problem. This is the same thing with rap, like you mentioned, with Young Thug and with certain dudes, Future, where you have these two dudes they're doing it their own way that was a lot different than what other rappers are doing, and now other rappers are copycatting it, taking their sound. You're from New York.
Doing it worse.
A person's from New York trying to imitate somebody from Atlanta. Like, what type of sense does that make? You know what I mean? Like, stuff like that where it hurts the overall genre of music. It's oversaturation of the same sound. It hurts the overall just the music. And you can say the same with debate television and player-centric media in the way that they go about covering the game. It has hurt the overall coverage and viewership of the game. And these executives are mainly to blame because they thought they could just copycat it and it will be fine. It's not always fine. That was a special time, and I just don't know if we're going to go back. I think we're kind of screwed.
We might be.
I think we're kind of screwed. I don't know. And to put a bow on this, the NBA, you always want to go with the highest bidder. When you're doing these TV deals, whoever offers you the most money, you always want to go to the highest bidder. But when you see that a company is shitting on your product, essentially, not all money is good money. That's all I have to say. So if you're going to accept that deal of theirs, I feel like they should demand certain things, like the coverage of the game. How are you covering our game? Who's going to be talking about our game? I think there needs to be some sort of deal in place where these networks, how you talk about our game, there should be more respect. There should be more just knowledge and background information on what this game is about. More research on what's going on in the game instead of just vibing out and thinking that because you're a former player that you can say whatever on the network and it will go by. Like, no. There needs to be a common ground on that, because I feel like the NBA has let these networks skate by and say whatever they want. So
Yeah, but then you kind of run into the whole censorship thing. You know, that's kind of a tricky.
That is true.
That's a tricky little.
But asking them to at least do research and stop being so negative about these players, like
that should just be like.
Is that not just
practice,
common practice and standard for a media company? I think that should be the case.
I agree, but you know.
Let me yeah, because I remember, and then we'll end it on this. I remember ESPN 2011 to 2016. They had entertainment. Entertainment was always there, but there was a healthy balance of entertainment and actual analysis. You had Sports Nation, you had Highly Questionable, you had First Take, you had His and Hers / Numbers Never Lie. It was entertainment, but it was a healthy balance of analysis and entertainment. The only show that had more entertainment than actual analysis is First Take. And these networks took First Take and said, we're just going to copy them. But it's possible. It's just about having the right people hired and on those networks, understanding what's appropriate and what's not. And it seems like that's just not the case anymore. I think that'll do it for this episode of Courtside View Podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment down below, hit the notification bell, follow the socials. Check out our main channel, Courtside View Podcast NFL. Link in the description will be there. Check out our other podcasts. Playlist will be in the description as well. We'll see you guys in the next episode of Courtside View Podcast. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.
Salute.
Just let me be.